record. So I'm just creating a new project again, just to get you comfortable. So today we are just doing loops, and then we'll follow with the different functions, etc. In the loops, I'm just creating a package which is called photo structure. So again, I'll create loops dot test dot. So I'm creating loops.test.sample. So under that, I'm creating a new class sample loops. Okay. So please follow the standards. The class should start with each. So for every word that we use, the first letter of the word in the class should start with capital letters. So the sample loops S and L should be capitals. For all the package names, everything is small letters. And for the variable names, we have for the first, like if I give count numbers, so first letter of the first word will be small, followed by the next letters. Next words. It will be capital letters. So C is small here and N is small here. For everything else in Java, for function names, etc., etc., we follow this pattern. So the first for the first word, first letter, it will be small, followed by the words which has capital letters. For classes, everything is capital letters, and for packages, everything is small letters, and for variables and everything, we have all first word is small, and followed by next words, the first letter will be capital. So that's the standard. So private int, I'm just giving 10. So now we are doing a loop. So why do we use loops? So if there is anything, if you want to do repetitively, then we can use loops. Like we can use loops. So there are different types of loops that we can use. So one is for loop. The other one is while loop. So we have do while, etc. But I don't really go to do while those loops because they're not really used that much. So in testing in specific, so if you know for loop and while loop, it will be more than enough, and you can achieve anything that you do with do while or whatever it is, you can achieve with for and while. There is another loop called for each loop. So we will see it later, but there is another loop called for each loop. Okay. So there are loops. So loops are used for if you want to do anything repetitive, like if you want to count numbers or if you want to print numbers with a pattern. So there will be a specific pattern with like a progression we call, right? So so either incrementing by 1 or incrementing by 2 or incrementing by 3 or just doing a progression, etc., or looping till something stops, or doing anything repetitively, so we can use it. So sometimes it can be a progression, sometimes it is repetition, anything you can call. So the first loop that we are going to see is for loop. To do a for loop, I'm just creating a main method. To start any program, we need main method, or to execute anything, we need main method. So we can just use main method. So I'm just using main, and control space is a shortcut. So just use main method here. So we can directly write code here instead of writing in other class and calling, or we can write in the same class, create an object and do it. So we'll create in the same class and we'll start creating an object and doing it. Okay. So I'm creating public void print numbers. We are using void print numbers. So I wanted to print numbers from 1 to 10. So So if I want to print numbers from 1 to 10, I have to write like this, right? So for example, we have to write like this. So sysout shortcut is control space. If I do system.print.line, so can put 1. So same thing I can just repeat 10 times. So we are trying to repeat now. So let's repeat till here. So if I say 2, if I say 3, if I say 4, if I say 5, so I can do like this. I mean, pretty much for any repetition, I can just start printing in the same code. So everything is same, but I'm just changing the numbers. So I'm just wanted to print from 1 to 10. So I'm trying to print the numbers, like all the numbers, correct? So what are we doing? We are doing the same step repetitively. So instead of that, we can just do it like using a for loop. So how can we do it by using a for loop? So let's see it. So now to run this one, we have to create an object of sample loops. Even though we have the main method here, we have to create an object for sample loops. So just create sample loops. So we can say s dot print numbers, so which we can run. So let's go ahead and right click and say run as Java application. So click on OK button, and we have seen that it's printing 1 to 10. So same code, we can reduce it to 3 lines. So we can minimize the code, the effort that we are trying to do, because now it is only 10, we can write 10 lines. What if it is 1000? We cannot write 1000 lines because it's getting more repetitive. So instead of that, we have something called loops, which we can really utilize it. So simply we can use something called for loop. So for, so we will say starting point, the starting point is an integer. So I equal to 0, semicolon, I less than or equal to 10, semicolon, I plus plus. So open brace, close brace, and then we can say sysout, and then say I is a variable. So what does this line mean? So when I say I is equal to 0, I starts from 0, and once I starts from 0, it will check a condition. So whether the I is less than or equal to 10. So that is what is now I is 0, less than or equal to 10. So yeah, the statement is true, right? So when the statement is true, it will go inside. If the statement is false, it will not go inside. The same as if condition. If this statement is true, then only it will go inside. If this statement is false, then it will not go inside. So how does this statement can be false or true? First of all, it is going through the initiation. It is checking if it is 0. So once that is 0, 0 is less than or equal to 10. Oh, it is checking. Okay, it is correct. Yeah, it is still, true. 0 is less than or equal to 10. 0 is less, correct. So then it will go inside. So once it goes inside, it will start printing 0. Then it will come to plus plus. Then it comes to plus plus. It will not come before. So once these two lines are done, it will go here, and then it will come here. So then it will increment 0 by 1. 0 plus plus is 0, plus plus, plus plus means plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So it will then check 1 less than or equal to 10. So once it checks 1 less than or equal to 10, and it will go here again. So from here it will go from here, and then here, and then here. So then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. 10 is less than or equal to 10, because there is a equal to symbol here, still it is true. So it will also print 10. Then it comes and increments 10 plus 1, which is 11. Then it comes to 11. 11 less than or equal to 10 is false, because when I say 11 is less than 10, it's false. 11 is equal to 10 is false. So both statements are false. So it cannot go inside if it is false. Only if the statement is condition is true, then only it can enter. Very, very important. So it has three things. One is initiation. So that we are seeing here, right? I is equal to 0 is initiation. So how we are initiating it. And then the second one we have is the condition. So it is checking the condition. After that, it is executing the statements. And then it is going for incrementation. So once the incrementation is done, then it will not go to initiation again. Okay, leave it. So then it will go and increment it. So once it increments it, increment by 1, right? So it will increment by 1. Then it will go and again check the condition. And then again incrementation. Then if the condition fails, right? If the condition becomes false, exit. So that's how the for loop will work. So all these steps, it will do. So if you want to just print the numbers, first it will go to the initiation. After that, it will check the condition. It will go and print the statements, and then it will go and increment it again. Condition, check the run the statements, then this one, then again check, run, and then like this. So it will run till this condition is false. Once the condition is false, it will skip that and it will quit the loop. So just go and let's run the sample loops again. Save it. So see here, it is running all the things. So it is running from 0 to 10 because, so what did we do here? We have minimized the code. So we have minimized the code, right? We have minimized the code from 10 lines to 3 lines. Even if I want to print like 1000, we'll have the same 3 lines. So basically we have lot of code minimization that we are trying to do, because we are using loops, because it is taking care of the repetitive behavior and we are using the loops. So we are doing the minimization of the code by using the loops. So this is the method that we are trying to execute. So for this class, the class that we are using, we have created an object here because it's in the same class. We have the main method also. So we have created an object here, and then that object we are also trying to print it by using s.print numbers, because in the same class we have the method also. That method we are calling here and we are trying to print it. So now we're just also discussing about the for loop, and then these are the different conditions that we have for the for loop. So it will have an initiation, it will have a condition, it will have an incrementation. So first it will go to the initiation, then it will go to the condition, then it will go to the then it will go and run the statements, then it will go to the incrementation. So if you want to do the incrementation before going to the statements, then you have to do the pre-incrementation. The pre-incrementation is plus I. The change between this and this one is, first it will go to here I equal to 0, and then it will check the condition. If the condition is satisfied, then it will go and increment first and then go and run the statements. So let's go and run now. So it will not print 0, it will not print, it will just printing 0 before, and then it is um, and then we are printing the I. Okay, I'll check this and come. So we can also do the pre-incrementation, and then you can also do the decrementation. So if you want to just do the decrementation, you can just do I minus minus, and if you want to do the pre-decrementation, you can just do minus minus I. So everything is one and the same. But with loops you should be very careful, because there is like it is having a heavy chance of going to infinite loops. Because now if you see this one, right, so I is 0, so you're doing 0 minus minus 0, which is like minus 1, or it will go into minus 1. So minus 1 is less than or equal to 10, and then it will print minus 1, it will go to minus 2, minus 3, but it will never satisfy the condition. Every time it will be true, so it will hang up in infinite loop and it will never stop. So you have to kill the Eclipse. So please be aware, whenever you're doing decrementation or anything which is not in a regular format, you should have to check for infinite loops. But let me check for why it is going for. Okay, there's something wrong. I'll just go ahead and check and let you know, guys. So what is difference between plus plus I and I plus plus? I'll just go and check and let you know. There is some confusion with me, so I'll just go and correct that stuff. Okay. Um, so this is all about for loop. Any questions?
No, good.
Okay. Any other questions? Any? Pragna?
No, okay.
Okay. Cool. So there is other thing called while loop. You can also use while loop. So but while will only do when there is a condition. I mean, like while I is greater than 3, it only applies when you wanted to check for condition. um, so while I greater than 3, if you want to run anything, so that condition should come from some system. So so same thing, like if you just wanted to till the statement becomes false, it'll go and run the statements. So while loop is used when you have a condition like so if you go to the credit card system, right? I mean, like if you go into any ATM system, and then if you just insert your card, debit card, then it'll ask you to do if you want to continue with the transaction or cancel the transaction. And if you go and continue the transaction and you just enter the pin wrong or something, again it'll ask you for continue the transaction or doing it till it'll ask you whether if you till it'll ask you when you cancel it, then only it'll go exit out. If you are saying continue for like in infinite times, it'll just go and continue it, right? So till the condition is satisfied, if you want to loop something, then you can use while loop. Okay, so for example, so I can enter the pin 3 times. So I can enter the pin 3 times. So now I am entering for the first time, but at the end, if the condition is met for 3 times, at the third time it should exit the loop. So till 3 times, if you want to execute some loop, right? So then we can use a while loop. So generally, what happens is you can ask for the input. Generally, user provides the input. So in the system, we provide the input, right? Whenever we insert the credit card, we provide the input, whether the pin or anything, we provide the input. But here we don't have any system which can take the input. I am only giving the input and I am only checking the condition. So I am saying I is equal to 3. So and then if I less than or equal to 3, then you continue it. And So because there is no incrementation, I am only incrementing it because I mean there is no user input. So generally, if you want to use while loops, a user should be providing an input. Like user should be telling what the system has to do. So generally, we will not tell the system. Like you will be entering into the system and you will insert a credit card. You will enter the pin for the first time. You will enter it. So it will just go and iterate it again because it's the condition is not satisfied. So you enter the second time, it will go and iterate again. If the condition is satisfied or not, it will check for the third time. If the third time also you are entering wrong, it will go and exit and say, okay, from because he entered 3 times and still the login is unsuccessful. It will go and say login unsuccessful and it will log the stuff. So if you want to do some conditional checks which are iterative, then you can use while loops. But most of the times you can also, it's like if condition, right? If for switch case, you can interchange and use the same thing. You can also either use for loop or while loop, because even for, right, these are all optional. So because if you don't have int I is equal to 1, or if I is equal to plus 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 etc., even for loop will works. So they are not mandatory. So let me cut and put it here. So these things are not mandatory, so it's just interchangeable. If you see now, even for loop works. So that's because a for loop can also act as a while loop. So because for loop and while loops are something which you can use interchangeably. So it's all logical things. I mean, wherever if you want to use while loop, you can also use for loop, but they have given other option in Java as while loop. Some people, while writing a logic, they'll feel comfortable with while, and then if you want to use it, but you can interchangeably use for loop also without having an initiation, and without having an incrementation. You can still use for loop also. So the for loop, only condition is mandatory, the rest of the things are not mandatory. So you can interchangeably use while and for. But while is used when you want to satisfy some condition to be true. So if that condition is true, then it will execute the stuff. If the condition is false, it will not execute. So in those cases, you can use while statement. Okay. So you can also use do while, but mostly we will not use. Mostly we'll be using for loop or a while loop. You can use do while loops. So when you can use do while loops, I'm just telling for your knowledge. But mostly I've not seen anywhere where testing teams use do whiles. So if you want to do something by default for the first time, then you can use a while loop. Sorry, when then you can use a do while loop. So, and after that, right, if the condition is satisfied, it will continue the loop. And then if the condition is not satisfied, then it will exit the loop. So for example, right, if you go to any of the malls, so if you see here, if you take a new credit card, you will get 10% discount for the first time. But from the second time, if you want to get the 10% discount, by default you will get for the first time, do some action, then while the condition is met, do for the second time. That's how the do while loop you can interpret. So do some action, you have to do some action. So but by default it will do for the first time. Whenever you do it, it will do for the first time. First time it will do it. First time you will get 10% off. So from the second time, if the condition is met, I mean from the second time, like while if the day is Thursday or something like that, if the day is equal to Thursday, then from the second time it will loop it, or if it will not loop, if it is not satisfying the condition. So for the first time, if you're using if you're using any for loop, I mean do while loop, for the first time it will execute it. From the second time to execute it, it needs to satisfy this condition. So in those conditions where if you have to by default execute for the first time and continue only if the condition has satisfied for the second time, then you can use do while loop. So for loop you can use for incrementation or some progression that you wanted to do. If you want to run some tests only if the condition is met, then you can use while loop. So if you want to run something by default for the first time and continue only when the condition is met, then you can use do while loop. Okay. The for loop is like an iterator which you can use for like a progression, like incrementing 1 2 3 or 1 3 5 or 1 10 1 5 10 etc etc. You can use a for loop. While loop, if you want to meet a condition like 3 times or 4 times, if you want to meet only conditions, then you can use while loop. You can use a do while loop when you are used for the first time if you want to do any action, and then after that if you want to continue only if the condition is satisfied. Like if you go to any mall and if you take a credit card, and then for the first time it will accept it, from the second time either the day should be Thursday or either you should have some points or something like that. So if the condition met, then second time it will do, then you can use a do while loop. So or do until loop, when it will until some condition is met, it will do that. So those things are rarely used. Do while and do until, they rarely used. But mostly while the condition is met, it will do the operation. Or for loop, whenever it is iterating, for the progression, both will be used mostly. But to my knowledge, if you can achieve any programming thing using a for loop and if loop of for loop and if condition in Java, mostly you have to use for and if. In the combination you can write any logic. And this is just only explanation, guys. Logic writing is some talent. I mean, we just need to understand the scenario. Based on what we understand, if you go and do something, then it will work. So you have to make sure that you understand the logic and you need to think how you can write the logic. So that thing only comes up with practice. You have to practice a lot, how to write a logic. I mean, how to write some incrementation of some numbers, or how to decrement some numbers, or how to calculate some prices. So if you're writing more programs, you'll write more logical thinking. So that you have to incorporate by practicing more. Okay, so that's about loops. Any questions? I'll just give an assignment. I'll send you an assignment. Just go and practice and say, okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So we'll go into the Java constructors. I'm creating another project called constructor. I'm creating a new calculator class. Okay. Or I can, yeah, I'll create a calculator. Mm, how many of you know DB, database connect, DB, how to work with DB databases? Everyone knows what is working with databases, Kavita?
I got MySQL and SQL.
Okay, I'll tell the concept, but if you have any questions, because it's kind of a new concept if you have not worked at all. So I'll just tell the concept. If you have any questions, you can just ask me. Okay. Let's take something called browser. Okay, so a constructor is something, it's a method, it's called a method. So method means a function. Okay, method or slash function, everything is same. A constructor is a function. So and a constructor has the same name as the class name. So the name of the constructor and the name of the class will be same. The name. So when I say constructor, if I say public browser and then open brace, close brace, and close this like this, then it will become a constructor. So now this is a constructor. So constructor is a function. This is also a function, like we say public add method, right? Say public add or public launch browser. So this is a method. So when I say launch browser, so it will launch the browser. Public void launch browser. So void is some return type. We'll discuss that later. So when I say public browser, if you want to, so if you see here, the name of the class and the name of the function, they both are same. So if you have something like a function like this, the name of the class and the name of the method are same, then that method is called constructor. In Java, it's called constructor, and it's a function. So the same name has been and the class name and it will have the same name. So a constructor will always be public, because you will not call the function, you will call the so whenever you create an object like browser b is equal to new browser, automatically the constructor function is called by default. So that's why you don't explicitly call the function. So that's why it will be public always. If you put private, you cannot create an object at all. So that's why the constructor will always be public, because if you want to create any so I'm creating a main class. So in the main class, so I'm just creating a main method. So in the main method, if I say browser b is equal to new browser, so automatically whenever, even though if the constructor, if this is not mentioned in Java, automatically Java thinks that there is a method which you have to execute internally. I mean, in the memory, it thinks that there is a method called browser, and we have not explicitly specified that method here. We have explicitly specified it, but in internally, if you don't mention this one, it even though if you don't mention it, internally Java understands that okay, there is some function called browser and I have to execute it, and it will execute it, but it does nothing because you have not written anything here. So if you write anything, it automatically does it. So now you have not written anything here. If you go and execute this browser b equal to new browser, if you save it and if you run it, so it has not done anything, correct, because you have no implementation here, nothing is given here. For example, if I give sys out and say if I say default implementation, right, and if I say and run, now see, it has created a default implementation. We have not called any method here. See, we have not called any method. We not said b dot some method or b dot something. So we said browser b equal to new browser. Where is this method getting called? Because you call the internally, generally the constructor is invisible. Now you made it visible and you are saying that okay, whenever you call this class, you do something by default. So that default thing is you need to do system.out.println defend implementation. Means by default something, if you want to execute when you initiate an object, then you can use constructor. Means by default, if you want to do some implementation, then you can use constructor. So So it's by default. I mean, by default, if something has to be done by launching the object, means by launching the object. So the difference between the normal function and the constructor function is normal function will put b dot and we will say launch browser, correct? So this is a normal function, but for a constructor you don't say b dot anything because the name of the constructor and the name of the class is same. So that's why whenever you are calling this one here, only the constructor itself automatically indirectly it is already called. So by default the implementation of the constructor is called whenever you create an object. So automatically the constructor will be called. So can I parameterize the constructor? Means can I give different constructors? Yes, you can also give different constructors and different varieties of constructors. So I can say parameterize public browser and then say string browser type. Means you can pass some string which says browser type. So now instead of default implementation, I am saying default implementation hyphen space. So browser type. Means I'm just appending the string. So string appending we can use by plus, means we are doing a string concatenation. We are generally appending this one with this one. So we will say default implementation plus browser type we will get. So now if you go to the main class, so how we can initiate that? Browser b equal to new browser of, so we can say Firefox. So while launching we are telling that launch Firefox by default. So if you want to change it, you can change it. By default, you are telling that you implement Firefox. So now you can save and you can just run. So if you see now default implementation is Firefox. How did it execute? So when you see that, if you see that the constructor, there are two types of constructors now. Either you can say browser b equal to new browser, or you can say browser b equal to new browser of some string value. So here you're passing some string value. That string value is passed to this method. Whenever it finds out that it is here, then it understands that okay, it has to call this method and then it will go and execute this method, because now you're passing a parameter, right? So now if you don't pass the parameter, it will go into a different method. If you don't call the parameter and if you run, right, so it is going to default implementation, means it understood that it has to go to this constructor. If you do with parameter ff, so it understands by default, it is understands that okay, I don't want to go to the browser b, so this function, instead of this function I have to go to the this function. So this function means this instead of this constructor I'll go to this constructor. How does it know? The way that we call here, whether we call with parameter or without parameter, based on that it will understand that it has to go here or here. So the name of the function names are same, the only parameters are changing. If the names are same, if for two functions, if the names are same and parameters are different, then that is called constructor overloading. So constructor overloading means same name as the constructor name, that is class name, and same name but different parameters. Means here I don't have any parameter, here I have one parameter. I can have one more function with the same name with two parameters. Two parameters means parameters is nothing but which is called inputs to the functions. So when I say parameter, that is input to the function. So we are trying to input the function. So whatever we give here, right, as the input ff, that has been carried over to this input and then that is printed here, right? So that is an input that we are giving. So that is parameterizing the product. 1 minute. So that is parameterizing the constructor. Okay. So now if I give two parameters, two inputs, so now also it accepts, but it will call the, so it is calling the implementation, that is the third one, because now you change the inputs. Now you have created one more constructor and you change the inputs here. So based on the calling at the compile time, so whatever it calls, so if it calls the first function without parameters, it will call this one. If it calls with one parameter, it will call this one. If it calls with the two parameters, it will call this one. So how does it understands? Based on whenever you are calling the object, and if you are passing one parameter, it will call one parameter one, and without any parameters, it will call without any parameter, and if you pass two parameters, it will do the two parameters one. So the constructor is something, if it has the same name as the class name, then it is called the constructor. So basically, if you see here, the name of the class and the name of the function is same. So if you have the name of the class and name of the function as same, then you can call it as constructor. So by default, even though if you create a class, if you don't mention it, then it will have a constructor without any parameters. In Java internally, it will have a constructor without any parameters. So by default, it is known to Java that it will have any constructors. But if you want to explicitly do some default implementation for the constructor, you can explicitly specify public browser like this, as the name of the class as the constructor name, and the method public, I mean the access modifier public. And then you can just say, okay, what implementation you wanted to give by default. By default, if you want to do some implementation, by default, if you call browser class, if you want to launch the browser, so you can do that. So you can also do different kinds of default implementations. By you can by default, if you want to go to that place or this place or that place, you can also mention in different ways. So that is nothing but overloading the constructor. How are we overloading? We are giving the same name with different input parameters. So we are giving one input parameter here, we are giving two input parameters here, because here you're telling only to launch browser, here you're telling to launch with browser type, here you are launching default implementation with browser type and version. So how do the Java knows it? So because based on the different parameters that we have. So whenever you are calling the object, and if you are giving different parameters, then based on that input, it will go and find out the right constructor and it will call it. So the way it works is, because it has the same names with multiple parameters, so then the word that we can do call it as is constructor overloading. Any questions on constructor and constructor overloading? So anyone did not understand? I'll come to the other question, because it's very new concepts. You have to go through it a lot of times. Pragna, I can't hear you, Pragna. Can you make your your voice is not audible for me. I don't know. Raja,
Okay for me.
Kavita,
Yeah, I don't know.
Shailaja, any questions? Okay, guys. Just practice this, the constructor and stuff. I'll give an example, so you can just go ahead and practice it. So this is called Java constructor. So now let's go to the methods. Methods means functions. So we can have variables like the int, and s. So these are all called methods. Okay, the methods are nothing but functions. A function with doesn't have any return type or name of the function is same of the class name, then it's called a constructor. But if you have some return types and if you have some function with a different name, then it's called a normal function. Generally they are called normal functions. So the normal functions, right, will have different names than the class names.
Bharat,
Yeah.
can we give the same class name and method name?
No, for constructor you can use. For the normal class, for the normal things you cannot use it. If you want to use a normal method, this will throw an error. So change to constructor. See, it is throwing an error because the constructor can only have, by default, if you want to launch the object, then only you can have those type of names. But for the normal methods, you can give any name else than the name of the class. Got it?
Okay. Yeah, okay.
You can give any name, but not the class name. But you can give anything like browser1, browser2, any name, but not the class name. If you give the name of the name as the class name, then that is a construct. That term is called constructor, but still it's a function. A function is anything, a set of lines that are getting executed, you call it as a function. So here there are set of lines that are getting executed, but the name of the function is same as the class name. That's why the term is constructor, but still internally it's a function. Why it is not returning anything, means why it is not telling us what you give back, is because whenever we say browser new browser b is equal to new browser, right? When I say b is itself is an object, so object means the whole class. So b contains the whole class. That's why you don't return anything here. So what is return types I'll discuss in this methods, but it doesn't return anything. So the constructor doesn't return anything. Anything, because by default while creating an object, the Java holds the whole class. So that's why it doesn't really keep anything. Okay, so because the browser, when I say browser b equal to new browser, the whole class is contained in that b. So that's why it doesn't return anything. Whereas in methods are normal functions, different names than the class names. You have to give different names. Okay, different names than the class names. So you can give like launch browser, you can say launch something, anything, etc. Pretty much any name of the browser. So even the normal functions will have some implementation. The implementation is any logic. So you can write whatever the logic that you wanted to write, you can write here. So but the functions will have return types. Return types means functions in Java should say whether it gives back something or it will not give back something. So it will say if it gives back something or not. So when I say void, right, it will not give back anything. Means void says it's a function which will not return anything. So it will just do some action, but it will not return anything. So that's called void function. So any function except void, if you just put anything called int or something, like say if I just have one more function, so public void add, okay. So if I say int add, and you wanted to return something, means, and then if you want to add two numbers like int a and int b, and then you want to return a plus b. So this is a function which has return type and then input parameters. So if you see input parameters are nothing but they are called arguments or input parameters, which is inputs to the function. So why do we need the inputs from the function? Whenever we call, right, we can pass some input. Whenever we call the function, so we can pass some input. So the same input is also called parameters. They are called parameters, or some call them arguments. Okay, so you can call them arguments or parameters. So these things, whatever I'm mentioning about these things, so you can call them arguments or parameters. So but they are called inputs to the function, means from somewhere whenever you're calling, you can pass some inputs, like you can pass 1 comma 2, you can pass 2 comma 3, you can pass 3 comma 4. So those inputs are then passed to the internal into the function, means it will carry over here. So then here what are we doing? We're just adding 2 comma 3, and then we are trying to return that. Where are we trying to return that? Wherever you are capturing it somewhere, right, we are trying to return that. That return, what is the type of the return? The integer is the type of the return. So the return type is nothing but, means you are trying to return something, means giving output to the output to wherever it is called. So it is called return type. So now how does it work? So let's go here into the main class. Okay, I wanted to call b dot add 2 comma 3, means the 2 comma 3 that you are passing here, it's these two are the inputs to the function that you are passing here, means that 2 comma 3, that 2 will come here to the a, and then 3 will come to the b, then it will add 2 plus 3. But the 2 plus 3 is 5. Now if you want to send that output as 5, you are also telling that okay, this 5 can be sent over to the function wherever it is called, means you are here capturing that output. Int output means it is giving you integer, right? Int output equal to b dot add 2 comma 3. So what should be our output? The 5. System dot output is equal to, what is the output? Is what the output, whatever the output that we got from there. So if you run now and click on OK button, so if you see here, the logic is whatever we are telling, that's the logic. So now we are saying 5 is the output because it is the addition output. So if you see closely what we are trying to do, when I say b dot add 2 comma 3, it went to the function, it went to here, it passed 2 comma 3, it added the 2 comma 3, it sent back that 5 from here, and from there it came here to the back to the main class, and then that 5 is stored in output now. So once that is stored, we are trying to bring out that output as 5, right? Whenever I call the output, it is 5. So that output is sent back as a reference, and you see that value. So that's how the function work. The function can have two things. One is no return type, and can also have any return type, integer, string, or the boolean, any type of pretty much string or any other class, etc., etc. You can have any return type. A function can have no return types. A function can have a specific integer return type, or etc., etc. A function can have input parameters. A function will not have input parameters. So a function is something you are having set of statements that you wanted to execute is nothing but a function. So you can have void functions which doesn't return anything. We're not expecting anything from the void functions. Even if you expect, right, it'll throw an error. If I say string launch browser, string s equal to launch browser. So then it will throw an error. It is telling that, okay, just let me put it. So string s equal to launch browser is telling that, okay, change return type of launch browser to string, because currently it doesn't have any return type. It cannot accept like that. So that's why if you have return types, you can get something out of it. But if you don't have return types, you cannot get out of something like that. So a return type, if you say void, it doesn't have any return type. If you say int, means it will have some return type which has to be passed on wherever it is called. So after the operation is complete, like say if you want to calculate the price of 10 items, so you sent all the list of items that you wanted to send, and then you add all those items and you want to send the total price. You can send the total to the place where you are calling it. So that's how you send the output. Okay. So can you overload a function? Overload a function means same name of the function with different parameters. You can also do that. So you can have an add function, the same add function. You can add integers. You can add strings also. You can say string A and string B. But this is now logically wrong, right? If you add two strings, it can be only string. It cannot be integer. So you can add string. So means it will append the strings. It will not add the strings now. If I pass ram comma thing, so it will just append and it will send that one now. So how does Java understands what function to call? Based on the input parameters that you are passing, that it will understand now. So if you pass now, okay, now how does it understand? Java understands what function to call. If you pass two strings, right? Test comma t. So now Java understands, okay, he is calling two strings. So whether I have a function with some type like that, yes, because you can add two strings, or either you can add two integers, correct? So it will just go and check if I have that function which has two strings. If you find that strings, then it will go and add it. So if you pass that, then it will append the strings, means it will just go and combine the strings. So it is saying test t, means it, because you are adding two strings, strings two cannot be added, it can be appended. So that appending is happening here. So if you add integers, right, if you send two integers, like say 2 comma 3, it will just go and add, because it understands that you should not call the first function. You should call the other function and you should add it. How does Java know that? Based on the call that you are doing here, like whether you are calling with integers or whether you are calling with strings. So whether you are calling with one integer or two integers or two strings, so it depends on lot of factors. So it will just go and, means you can also have now two or three parameters also. So you can have one more thing called int c. So it's another function now. So and then you can add c also. So now if you call with three parameters, it will call the function which has three parameters, because it's the same name. Add is not changing anywhere. Add is, you can either send two parameters, either you can send three parameters, either you can send now strings or integers. So the way that we are handling that is nothing but the method overloading. So we are doing a method overloading. Method overloading is nothing but same method name with different parameters. How does the Java understand what to call? It will understand based on the call. So if you call with strings, it will call the string one. If you call with integers, it will call the integer one. So based on the call that you are trying to do, it will just go and call the specific one. So these are methods. Methods are normal functions. Constructor is a specific function which has the name of the class and the same name. So but normal methods, it doesn't matter. You can give any name. Launch browser, add anything, pretty much any name you can give it. So any questions, guys? Raja, any question?
Okay, Baru.
Okay. Kavita?
No.
Okay, guys, you have to practice. Just try to create an example. So where I have to add, I have to add and see. Uh, if I pass two parameters, it should add two numbers, and if I pass three parameters, it should add three numbers. If it should add four, so till 10, right? I mean till 5. So just create 2, 3, 4, 5, and just try to do. I mean, if I call the function with add with two parameters, still it should add three parameters, should add four parameters, should add, and five parameters should add. So just do a method overloading and try to add using the same name. It should be same name with different parameters, and then call with the same name and see how it works. Just send me that script once you write it. Okay, Raja, good. Yeah, Pragna, I cannot hear your voice. I mean, something is breaking. Somewhere I cannot hear you at all. I can call you. Okay. Okay, guys. So that's it from my side. If you have any questions, I can answer, or else I'll just stop. Raja, any questions?
No, Bharat, sir.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. So any questions, you can just call me also. So we'll see later. Okay.